We're going to do something in this episode that we should do more of, and that is answer listener questions. We think you're going to get a lot out of this show as you make your final preparations for the Leadville Trail 100. And there are some great questions here, but there is one we didn't get to, and that was, how do I stay relaxed in my run up to race day? That is a question I don't know.
Well, since you asked, I will answer, and it's an easy one. Floyd's of Leadville CBD. Even though your big blocks of training are done, your rest and recovery is not. In fact, now is the time your body is putting the finishing touches on your fitness. And to get all that you can out of the last hard training block, you need your rest and recovery.
Yeah, but we get it. Being calm and collected is not easy when there is more planning to do, work to deal with, mudslides on I-70, traveling to Leadville. Oh, it's going to be a tricky one this year. So lean on Floyd's for some help. Not for logistics, but for rest and recovery, especially this close to race day. I keep my Floyd CBD within easy reach. A capsule, a tincture, balm, whatever I feel is the thing for the moment. It all helps reduce my building race day stress, and it helps keep me on track with rest and recovery.
And even though I am not racing, I still need to be rested to keep up with Fatty. He is planning group rides and podcasts and needs me to feed him. I got to have my A game on come Leadville weekend. Floyd's will help me go to like a B-, to a solid A.
I am a needy racer. I admit it. Yeah, you definitely need to have something to help you cope with me. Stay on top of your rest and your recovery and use a little Floyd's when you need to. Check out all of Floyd's CBD recovery tools at floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY to get a 15% discount.
And thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 17 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty. Over the next 2 episodes, we are going to be answering your questions about doing this highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race, and we're going to get some help. Mountain bike pro Payson McElveen joins us to lend his knowledge. But before we get to the questions he's going to be answering, and we'll answer them too, about racing Leadville, we want to ask you to come join us for a social ride in Leadville.
Yeah, stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about where we'll meet before and after the ride.
Yeah, the start is going to be close to the starting line of the race without actually getting in the way of traffic. We are going to ride at a nice, social, chatty pace, because we're chatty people, down the pavement, 2 Kevins, up that first mile of the climb to the hard left turn. Then we are going to regroup, head back down, over to the boulevard, and up that wide dirt road that surprises so many people at the end of the race. We are going to eliminate some surprises. You're going to know the beginning and end of the race.
And at the end, we'll give out some swag from some of our longtime sponsors, Floyd's of Leadville, The Feed, and DNA.
Yeah, that's right. Most importantly, though, this is going to be a chance for us to have some fun with you. As we approach the end of this season of stories, we're looking forward to chatting with you and hearing you tell us your story. The Leadville stage race is in the books, and we have some fresh intel on the course changes from people who have seen it firsthand at race pace.
Yeah, I've been getting daily debriefs from a couple of stage racers, good buddy Mark Prince and his friend Kevin Godley, who actually wore the Leadville Podcast kit on stage 2. So it was good to see our colors flying during the stage race. But more importantly, Fatty, the both of them gave me breakdowns on these course changes and the course in general. As you know, we've been getting a lot of reports about the upper section of Powerline. And both Mark and Kevin confirmed, yeah, that upper section is different and much tougher than you're probably used to over the last few years. The rain has done a number on that section. So look for, again, they confirmed it. It is tougher out there. They saw a couple of crashes during the stage race. And in fact, there's one section where it looks like someone has done some erosion control and actually put some extra boulders in there to help water runoff. And that area in particular can be a little tough. It's rideable, I hear. But again, you might notice that one of the turns has some more rocks in it due to erosion control. Now, the private property workaround, which is one of the big headlines from the course changes, our guys both rode it. We're talking about County Road 28A, and this is where you're going to make a left instead of a right, and you're going to start heading what feels like back towards Leadville. You're not going to go back to Leadville, but it kind of feels that way. The road itself, 28A, is wide, but it does have washboards. It's slightly downhill in this direction. It's about 0.8 miles. The shoulders, they told me, are a little smoother, but in general, look for kind of a washboardy wide feel there. You make a right onto the pavement once you get down that 0.8 miles of County Road 28A. This is just a short tarmac section, nothing to it, a couple blocks. Then you make another right onto some double track. This is a slightly uphill section. It's the double track like you're probably used to seeing on that section when you come off the pavement. Once you go through the fish hatchery and you come off the pavement and go past the gravel quarry and head for pipeline. It's similar to that kind of double track. Then you make that left along some power lines, not the power line, but some power lines, and now you're headed towards Lost Canyon Road on some double track. This is, again, this condition is similar to what we found in the old alternate feed zone. And again, you're going towards Lost Canyon Road, and then you make, of course, your right on the Lost Canyon Road, and now you're headed up to Columbine, right? So we're going up Columbine. We're going to have a shorter climb, obviously, because the turnaround has been moved up a lot closer this year to help compensate for these workarounds, for these course changes. They said the top section was, first of all, they have that split section of trail above the goat trail that you folks have been doing for a couple years now. That stays the same. That's what they did during the stage race. Looks like that's going to stay the same. In fact, they said that makes things safer up there, too. For people still going up and people coming down, it actually splits you, puts a little space in there, and makes that area all the more safer. The turnaround itself is a little tighter than maybe we first heard. In other words, you do have to slow down coming through there, and it can be a little tight and single track like. So expect to scrub a little speed as you make that turnaround. And it'll be interesting to see, both boys said that it'll be interesting to see where exactly they put kind of all the volunteers and the aid. There didn't seem to be any obvious working space up there, but they thought that if they moved tables around and place them in the right place, they could find enough area to help riders if they did want to stop and obviously deal with the turnaround in there. But you might have to turn around, and they even saw a couple of people put a foot out as they made the turnaround up there, which kind of surprised me.
Interesting.
So watch for that on race day. Going back now. Now we're headed back to town, and again, I want to talk about the private property workaround again, going inbound. And again, you're bombing down Lost Canyon. You're going to go flying past the previous alternate feed zone. But again, you're going to make a left at those power lines, and that'll put you back on the double track. And this is a little downhill, and you'll be carrying a lot of speed on this double track as you're going inbound. In fact, Mark Prince, my friend, told me he was carrying so much speed going this way, he nearly missed the right-hand turn that you need to make. And so you want to be just remember, I got a right-hand turn coming up here. You're going to be on this double track for like a half mile, so just be ready for that right-hand turn. Otherwise, you'll blow through it and you'll end up on somebody's private property, which we're trying to avoid. So you're going to make the right, go down to that little pavement section again, left on the pavement, and then left back on, County Road 28A, I believe it's called. Right. And now that thing is uphill, right? So it's, again, same conditions, kind of washboardy, wide, but now it's just slightly uphill. We're talking about like just 150 feet of climbing in this section, not that much, but both guys said, Mark and Kevin said, look, it looks like a road you feel like you should be going 13, 15 miles per hour on, but really you're kind of grinding away at 10, at least for them. And both Mark and Kevin are 10-hour guys at the Leadville 100. They've both done it several times. So
lots of experience, yeah.
Lots of experience, and you get an idea about what their average speeds generally are. So, yeah, again, it looks like you should be going faster than you really are on County Road 28A as you're heading for home. The single track workaround, a few highlights here. I mean, obviously you go past the single track turnoff, and as you pass it, you're on a paved road until you hit County Road 136. You make a left on County Road 136. This is double track. Again, it's kind of a false flat. It's 1.6 miles all the way up to power line. You do about 300 feet, 330 feet of climbing to get there. Again, double track. The double track is a lot like the other double track you find in the Leadville area. Not a lot of surprises there. There is a little kicker right at the end, they told me, about 100 to 200 yards worth of 5 to 6% as you intersect with the power line section itself. But again, you're only doing, it's about 1.6 miles in total and about 331 feet of climbing. Now, the power line returning home. Again, we're going to go back to that upper section. They went down it. They thought it was rough going down. They saw a couple crashes. Going up, they didn't see as much drama going there. I mean, obviously there's rock. There's more exposed rock due to the rain. I mean, the rain has just washed away a lot of that topsoil and exposed more of those rocks. And what that just forces you to do is just make good line choices, whether you're going up or down, and it's certainly affecting you going up now too. You just got to find the smooth track. They said there are shoulders up there on the upper section that you can try and ride, although they're off camber. And so if things get slippery, like if we get dry, dusty conditions, those shoulders might not have the grip that they got. They rode it inbound at least, and it had been raining. So they had some tacky conditions out there. But again, they said that while it did require them to focus more, they did not lose time up here going up power line, especially in that upper section. They felt like they were able to maintain their speed and get through it. Mark told me that he thought it was wise to probably walk through this erosion control rock bed that's been laid in there, just because, it can be slow in there. And if there's other riders, he thought it wasn't a bad idea if you walk that section. You may have to dab here and there where before you didn't, but both guys said they felt like they were able to do their normal time through that area. The area I like to call the ditch. This is the old railroad track area that leads you to the boulevard section. Obviously right now it is quite wet in there because it has been raining like hell in Leadville, and both our boys had to dodge puddles. In fact, they found that the sides, sometimes you'll like skirt around the sides of those puddles. You've probably done that before, Fatty. But they said even the sides there were quite muddy and slippery. So now that all may change by the time we hit it on race day. Things could dry out, and they can dry out there pretty quickly, although I would think there'd be maybe a little water left down there in the ditch. So the ditch was suffering from all the rain as well, and had some noted changes. Mark and Kevin both said that the upper section of Boulevard actually was quicker than they remembered it. So somehow maybe things have maybe smoothed out up there. Now, Fatty, we do want to get to another kind of course knowledge, but it's not the Leadville course. This is the course to Leadville.
Oh, yeah.
Major alert going out now for anybody, especially anybody coming from out west, driving to Leadville. And that is the I-70. The I-70 out of Rifle, in between Rifle and Eagle, which is the section of road you use, has been closed due to mudslides. And they don't know when it's going to open. It is now closed indefinitely. And the workarounds have been going through, people have been trying to go through Aspen. Some people can go up and over through Steamboat, but it's going to add hours onto anyone's drive trying to get to Leadville if you're coming from Utah, Southern California, Oregon. Yeah, Oregon folks, probably normally would come through the 70. So be on alert. Check the Colorado web pages, the websites, the state websites, the state transportation websites for updates on the road conditions there.
Yeah, the burns from last year are meaning that the rains this year are causing some extraordinary erosion, mudslides, and so forth. So yeah, all of that fire. We continue to pay a price for that. For what it's worth, I've gone up over Independence Pass to get to Leadville before due to road closures. And frankly, if you've got a big vehicle, that is a really, really treacherous road to drive. It is truly a single lane and only barely single lane. And if someone's car stalls, everyone gets to wait until that gets moving again. So for me, we are going to go through Steamboat Springs. Obviously, do your own checking, make your own plan, but just for what it's worth, Fatty did not enjoy driving Independence Pass as a way to get somewhere. As a scenic overlook, yes. As an artery to Leadville, no, thank you. So much to talk about, Fatty. This is not your standard Leadville year after last year having no race, having all of these course changes and then the weather changes and so forth. And of course, the erosion causing all of the trail things. Bear in mind that as we are recording, we are still 11 days away from race day. And in between that amount of time, all kinds of new weather things can happen. A lot of puddles can evaporate, or there can be brand new puddles. There can be new erosion, or new lines can evolve where everything can be hyper smooth. It is hard to say. We'll keep telling you everything we learn as we learn it. Regardless, on August 14th, we are going to be clipping in at the start line. And when I do that, you can bet it is going to be in a pair of Shimano S-Fire shoes with XTR pedals. Shimano mountain bike pedals are just so universally trusted. You'll frequently see pro racers who are sponsored by some other component maker still insist and quietly use Shimano pedals and cleats.
Yeah, there's plenty of pedal competition out there to keep some of these athletes from mixing their message. But hey, when it works as good as a pair of Shimano pedals, why risk it?
Mm-hmm.
And talk about reliable. I mean, I have seen some Shimano pedals that look like they have been smashed into every rock on Columbine, and yet they continue to pedal on. Mrs. Hottie has had a pair of lower-end SPDs for, I don't know, like 15 years or more, and she's still using them. No problems, no complaints.
Yeah, look up bomb-proof in the dictionary, and you will see a pair of Shimano SPD pedals. They really are. They're just extraordinary engineering that has been proven throughout decades of use. And we're not endorsing the kind of punishment that Mrs. Hottie is putting into her pedals. But I would say if you are going to, be putting your pedals through the mountain bike ringer, Shimano pedals can take it. Do yourself a favor. Shimano pedals or not, check your bearings and cleats just to make sure. And if you are on Shimano pedals, it seems like cleats are something that you can find right now. So if you have neglected them, maybe screw in a new pair before race day so that you have time to get them a little bit worn in so they're comfortable and in the right position for a good day on the bike.
Clip in with confidence and check out of all of Shimano's pedals and cleats at bike.shimano.com.
Yeah, Hottie, I have noticed some people on the Leadville participants page on Facebook looking for late advice on tire pressure. And I want to bring up a really useful and free tool our friends at envy.com have created. It is their tubeless tire pressure recommendations table.
We've brought up this table before, but it's worth looking at again, whether you're lucky enough to be racing Leadville on a set of Envy wheels or any other brand.
Yeah, head over to envy.com. That is enve.com. And on their front page, you'll see a What's Your Tire Pressure link. Click on that, scroll down to the mountain table. There you're going to find front and rear tire pressure recommendations for a huge variety of applications, tire widths, and rider weight.
It's a simple chart, but very comprehensive. Most of our listeners will want to go straight to the XC application using 2.1 or 2.25 tire widths.
Yep, I am actually using both of those since I have different tires on different wheels in front and back. Hottie, I've been to a number of Leadville 100 shakedown rides with groups. It is amazingly common to see folks riding with very hard tires, and that is not going to serve you well in Leadville.
Well, this chart will get listeners to the right general tire pressure and something more tailored to them than what you might find from a friend on Facebook.
Yep. And while you are there, check out the best wheels, bars, posts, and stems in the industry. That is enve.com.
I'm going to toot my own horn here. You know, Fatty, I spent more than 30 years in commercial radio. Yay for me. Much of it in the talk radio format. And one of the tenets of talk radio is taking calls from listeners. Let's go to the phones, the announcer would say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we're going to do for this episode. Sort of. Instead of going to the phones, because we don't have any for the show, we went to the Facebook and asked you to ask us your most pressing Leadville questions.
Yeah, and we give our answers for all of them. But we also got some smart answers by asking Payson McElveen to come join us and give his advice. Payson is a pro mountain biker. He rides for Team Orange Seal. He is also a fantastic podcaster. If you've ever heard the Adventure Stache, that's Payson. And if you haven't listened, please do. He's a Durango resident, and he has twice stood on the podium in Leadville. In addition to answering your questions, we did a little of what we've been doing all season, and that is tell some stories. Payson has some good ones.
All right, Fatty, very excited to have Payson McElveen here, a mountain biker by trade, but does some gravel events too. But again, we're going to focus today on Leadville and Leadville questions and your questions, and Payson's going to take a big swing at them too and hopefully help us get through this very grueling race. But Payson, I wanted to start off with a few questions for you. And going over your career, and listening to some other interviews with you, I came across something that I thought was very Yogi Berra for you. Now, Yogi is a well-known Yankee. He has Yogi-isms. And one of them was, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And it sounds like your fork in the road, Payson, was XC or XC endurance mountain biker. Which way am I going to go? And it sounds like this was happening for you somewhere pretty recently, 2016, 2017. You were at that fork in the road. Tell us about that fork and why you decided to take the one you did.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that, I still 4 or 5 years on reflect on a lot now. But basically, like many under 23 mountain bikers, especially here in the United States, I was trying very hard to make it on the World Cup scene, racing U23 World Cup events, that sort of thing, and having limited success, a few, just enough results here and there to kind of keep hope alive, but certainly not hitting it out of the park. And I was getting ready to graduate from college and kind of looking down the barrel of what does it mean to be a professional cyclist? Is that what I am? Is that the trajectory that I'm on? Because there's there's two ways to define that. You can be racing in the professional category and have sponsors and win prize money and maybe even have some small paying sponsors. But you're not paying a mortgage with that. You're not paying a 401k with that, contributing to a 401k. And so then there's the other definition of professional, which means, it's your full-time job and you're able to support yourself and maybe a family doing it. And I was definitely in the former camp. I was making money, but not the amount of money that probably anyone would want to live on. So I was looking down the barrel of what that meant and what I wanted to do. And, got an invite sort of out of the blue late 2016 to do this race in Mongolia called the Mongolia Bike Challenge. And it was completely different than anything I'd ever tried before, and wasn't an event that my team at the time really cared if I did or not. It was late in the year, so I decided just to do it for myself, really. And a journalist that writes stories for Outside Magazine actually reached out beforehand when they heard that I was going, and said it was an event they were interested in covering, and would I be interested in doing an interview after the fact? And I said, yeah, sure. Didn't think too much of it. Went over there, had an incredible experience, and I should also note that at the time, because of the financial situation that I mentioned before all this, I think to my name I had like $3,500 or something like that. Classic college student. And the event offered to cover all of my expenses once over there, but flying to Mongolia is not cheap. So I spent, I believe it was $2,700 of that $3,500 I had to get over there. So it was this big investment, but I just sort of had this inkling that maybe it was going to open some doors. And one thing I've also always tried to do throughout my career is pay attention to people outside the sport. Listen to what folks in the climbing world are doing. Listen to folks, in the kayaking world, sports that share similarities to cycling and mountain biking, but maybe are at a little bit different place in their life cycle or progress. And I'd seen what some of the athletes in those other sports were doing and who it seemed like was really successful, who was being looked to as leaders in the sport, all that sort of thing. And I realized it wasn't always the folks that had taken the traditional route. So long story short, I took this gamble, really, went over there, had an incredible experience, had a commanding lead in the event, despite some really tough competition. There was a really accomplished World Cup racer there. And so I also learned that I was a little bit better suited to this style of racing also. That was kind of another outcome. And kind of a funny wrinkle. Now it's funny. Going into the last day, which was a time trial, hour-long time trial, I had about a 5.5 minute lead, which should have been plenty. I decided to finally try this fermented mare's milk that some of the locals had been, pressuring me to try all week. And I thought, we got this in the bag. I'll go ahead and try one of these local delicacies. And I just got absolutely deathly ill that night. And I was so completely depleted from vomiting and everything the night before this time trial that I had to sit in line for the bathroom the next morning. Like I did not have the energy to stand long enough in this line. And so I was just thinking, what am I going to do? I spent all of this money to get over here. I know Outside is going to be way more interested in a story and interview with the winner rather than someone that lost the race on the last day because they got food poisoning. And I just had this moment where I was like, you know what? There are two decisions here: to feel sorry for yourself and give up mentally before trying, or just deal with the hand that you're dealt and give 100% despite the circumstances. And that's what I did. And it was the deepest, to this day, it's the deepest I've ever gone. I was actually losing vision in the last kilometer. Like I was just seeing white light because I was so depleted, but I held on to the win by 15 seconds. I lost like 4 minutes and 45 seconds in an hour-long time trial. So anyway, that was a big turning point in my career. Outside, ran the interview. That is what put me on Red Bull's radar. And I realized a few things. I realized I'm physiologically and mentally suited to this style of long distance, grueling riding. And I love the adventure. I love my bike taking me somewhere and seeing a place rather than going to some 3 kilometer long XCO course where you stay in a hotel all week and practice the same 3 kilometer course. So that's what planted the seed. I'm going to try to speed up the story here a little bit because I know this is a long intro, but
we love stories here. That's been the whole season has been stories. So you were right on track.
So moving into 2017, I had a bit of a breakout year results wise, kind of in the more traditional format. So I won my first professional national title in the marathon discipline. And then I finished third at cross country nationals, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, certainly a surprise to others. I had this crazy battle with Todd Wells on like the last climb of the last lap. And, Todd is the guy that really inspired me to move to Durango and got me into the sport to begin with. So that was a bit of a full circle experience in and of itself. And so those two results, it was funny because once I won marathon nationals, immediately it seemed like everyone pegged me as a long distance guy. Okay, you are a marathon guy now. And I hadn't quite decided that yet, especially after I was third at cross country nationals. And then after being third at cross country nationals, a couple of somewhat more traditional like World Cup factory style teams expressed some interest, and I started weighing those options. Do I want to double down and really try to make this World Cup dream work? Or do I want to, strike out on my own a little bit and do a little bit more of this long distance stuff that I feel like tells a better story a lot of times, offers more, content creation opportunities, all that sort of thing. And to this day, I don't know why, but I picked that route and I'm so happy that I did. I don't know where I would be today had I chosen that World Cup route. I don't even know if I would be racing professionally or, what my participation in the sport at all would be. So that was my inflection point, I guess, that you referred to. I'm sorry, it was a long tangent there, but that Mongolia story has quite a few twists and turns. And it's still to this day, like I said, I reflect on how in a lot of ways it almost didn't happen.
You have a 2/3 and a 12th at Leadville, 2017, 2018, third place, and then a 12th in the last edition we had in 2019. How did Leadville get on your radar and why did you say yes?
Great question. I believe it first made it onto my radar. I think it was probably a magazine just with Dave Wiens winning. I can't remember if it was Mountain Flyer or it might have been Velo News. That's when it first made it onto my radar. When it became a massive, goal and like, I want to do this one day type thing was the Race Across the Sky films that involved Dave and Lance Armstrong. It didn't make it onto my radar as I'm training for this next year type thing until I made that fork in the road that we just discussed. So around 2017, I guess. And part of that too was winning marathon nationals, and I think that the idea of wearing the red, white, and blue in arguably the biggest marathon race in the world was a really cool, intriguing opportunity. So I guess 2017 would have been my first race, in large part motivated by winning marathon nationals. Yeah.
And you'll of course be there again in 2021. I know nobody likes to say, but how are you expecting to do?
Great question. A race that competitive and with that many variables is very hard to draw a line in the sand with and say, my preparation has gone well and I expect to podium again, or I expect to win. If there's anyone that can say that at this point, it's probably only Howard Grotz, just based on his track record the last few years. It's funny because the first year I did it, I finished third, like y'all mentioned, and that was felt like a massive achievement and something I was very proud of. And then I went back the next year, naturally wanting to improve on that a little bit, but the field was quite a bit more stacked. We had Alban Licata back, Christian Hynek, Jeremiah Bishop. The Topi Gergon team came in massive force, and I finished third again, but it was a much harder fought third. That is probably my second favorite racing story, was battling Alban Licata, who was literally in the rainbow jersey for third that year. And so that, even though I finished the same place, it also felt like an improvement. And then going into 2019, I very firmly, in my head and with my coach and everybody, was saying, I want to race for the win. I'm going to race aggressively like I want to race for the win. And the night before I still don't know what it was, but I ended up eating something, was up all night, Mongolia style, and raced the next day exceptionally depleted, and was able to get very little food down, and it was just a complete death march.
I have some advice for you.
Oh yeah? Have you been through that?
Don't eat new things the night before a race. I see a pattern.
Well, it felt safe. It was just a lunch. Rebecca Rush and a couple of folks at Red Bull invited us out for lunch, and we just went to one of the local restaurants there, and it was strange. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, Rebecca, she poisons people. She slipped something into your lunch, man. I've seen her do it before. She will do whatever she has to win. And that is how she is.
Ruthless. Yeah.
They don't call her the Queen of Pain because she hurts. She hurts other people. That's the real reason. So we have a bunch of listeners who have sent in a bunch of questions about the Leadville 100 race. And they not only asked these questions, they voted on which ones they want to hear answers to. And so we thought we would give you some of these questions. I, of course, have thoughts of my own. Hadi has thoughts of his own. We'll see how often we agree, but let's go ahead and begin with those. The first one, I think, is one that every racer has to make decisions on. When do you burn matches? I think my favorite answer of all time came from Dave Zabriskie a couple of years ago when we did the live episode of the podcast, and he was talking about matches, and he said, when I was young, I felt like I had an endless supply of matches to burn, and that depends, that decides how many matches and when you're going to burn them. When you're older, maybe you don't have quite as large of a book. But we all have to decide when we are really going to set the book of matches aflame. What is your answer? When do you burn matches, and when do you avoid burning matches for the Leadville 100?
So one reason that I love Leadville so much is that everyone talks about the climbing, but the course is very unique in that it has these phases, and each phase presents very different challenges and opportunities. You've got something like the Sugarloaf climb, which is a very challenging climb. And then you have Columbine, which everyone talks about as this massive climb. But you've also got stuff like Pipeline, which is this really long, relatively flat section where being in a group is very, very beneficial. And so where I really focus on burning matches is on Sugarloaf. I'd say the first point is kind of Sugarloaf, because if you can be in a good group there, you will be able to kind of be towed along and simultaneously save energy for, an hour plus as you make your way towards Columbine. So positioning on Sugarloaf really pays off. Secondly, as the race progresses, the top of Columbine. So Columbine is so long, and folks that have done it before will know that it gets harder the further you go up. The most challenging part is at the top. And so saving a bit in the first half of Columbine can really pay off. And then secondarily, if you have a little bit extra in the tank to really dig deep and make sure that you are with some stronger riders going over the top of Columbine, that's really going to benefit you again, because you're going right back into Pipeline, doing that long hour plus section of Pipeline again, where being in a group is going to be quite beneficial. And the other way I look at it, and this is a little bit more personal for me as an athlete, but I found that when my back is really against the wall in terms of fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, when I feel like I'm really at my limit, that's when I find this sort of next gear, almost like another plane of suffering and athleticism. And the power line climb coming back in is so incredibly difficult and challenging that it forces you into this almost like secondary zone state in a way. Because when you're racing, like, you pretty much automatically go into a zone state. But that climb at mile 70 or whatever it is so unbelievably hard and puts you in such a survival mode that it just unlocks this other dimension of being an athlete almost. And I think it's one of the things that makes Leadville so special, because I know the folks that are trying to make cutoff go through that. And those of us at the front absolutely go through that too. And I have a lot of confidence now in my ability to go to that place. And so it might sound counterintuitive, but I worry a little bit less about going too deep on Columbine, because I know regardless, I'm going to that other dimension on Powerline. And so I kind of have a willingness to empty myself at the top of Columbine, also knowing that you've got that long flat section of Pipeline to recover a little bit. So that's kind of how I think about the pacing.
That is so much more strategic than how I burn my matches. I think that there's something there for any racer, fast or slow, that you are burning your matches in such a way so that you are able to avoid burning matches when there are places where you could feasibly work together with other people. That is super smart. Not something that I have ever done, something I'm going to think about this year. The place where I burn my matches is, as sort of a middle of the pack racer for the Leadville 100, is I avoid, if I can, and you can't always avoid burning a match in Leadville. It's just the way it is. I avoid burning until Powerline inbound. It's always been my sense that the rest of the Leadville 100, the first 75 miles of Leadville 100, are just to soften you up for the Powerline climb. And after that, I burn everything I can just to, I'm going into the place you're describing, this level of, it is sort of it's exquisite pain climbing the Powerline. And then you have a few minutes to recover as you're going down the Hagerman washboards, and then it is 3.5 miles of hard climbing again as you're going up the Mayqueen pavement. And I burn everything there, because I know that if I can empty myself out there, I'm going to pull back enough to get across the finish line just out of sheer, the smell of the barn. And so, you have more matches to burn, and so you can burn them in more strategic ways. For me to get across the finish line, It is really, it's power line, save myself so that I have something for power line and then for the May Queen climb. How about you, Hadi?
I take my matchbook out. That doesn't mean I'm going to burn them in several locations. Actually, I take it out at the start line because sometimes you need to move up. You want to get out of the way of all those other people with wide bars and a little sketchy about. So I'll take the matchbook out. Doesn't mean I'm going to light a match leaving town. Usually I don't have to light one there. I certainly have the matchbook out and the match loosened from the pack as we come off power line and headed for the pipeline section. I am willing to burn a match outbound there to stay with somebody. Like Payson said, that's going to help me pace my way to Twin Lakes. And then once I hit Twin Lakes, or usually Twin Lakes alternate feed where I get my feed, I put the matchbook back in my pocket, jersey pocket, and climb Columbine at my own pace. And the matchbook generally doesn't come out again until I am back near the power line section, or maybe the single track section, which we won't be doing inbound this year, where I'll pull it out, and if I see people there, okay, yeah, I think I can hang with these people, or if I'm pacing someone, yeah, the matchbook is probably going to come out. I'm probably going to strike a match here on the pipeline inbound. I know that's a little risky because you get the power line coming up, but again, I look at the power line as I'm going to go my own pace there, whatever that is. Whatever I've got there, that's all I've got, and I'm going to go over the top of there. May Queen. This is probably where I take my medicine, or probably where I run out of a few matches that I just can't stand that climb. It's in my head. I don't have any matches for it. I have the wrong striker or something. There's just no match available for some reason. But I generally get a match back sometime after descending Kevins and on the way home. So that's how I use my matches. I take the matchbook out strategy. Don't always strike it, but I've got my spots.
Yeah. And I think that it goes without, everyone is burning matches on Columbine. The sad thing is there's just not a lot of oxygen for those matches to burn very long up there, right? The flame goes out quick. I would say for most of us, it's a smart idea to avoid really just burning match after match on the goat trail, right? That is a place where you can light all you want, and it is not going to buy you that much time. So on to the next question. What is your advice for a 12-hour racer? What is a good strategy for staying ahead of the cutoff times without, and again, the phrasing on matches, without burning too many matches? So not thinking necessarily so much about you, Payson, but for folks who are really working to finish before they get pulled from the field, what would be the advice you'd give them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, anytime you're racing time rather than a placing, and anytime that goal feels a little bit tenuous, I think there's a lot of secret time that can be made up. And by that, I mean limiting stops, being very efficient with how much time you spend in an aid station, or, let's say the goat trail, for example, when you really feel like you're at your limit and you need to get off and walk for a bit, which even the very best do, not stopping and standing there and looking around and taking a bunch of deep breaths and just thinking, wow, can I make this? Instead, do all that, look around, assess where you're at, but do it while you're walking forward. All of those little things, all of those little moments that feel like short stops, when you're out there for 12 hours, you will be shocked at how many quote unquote short stops you make. And all of a sudden those short stops add up to 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And that can be the difference. So those little bits of time between that don't feel critical while you're doing it really add up quickly. And that's sort of a bike pack racing rule. And I think it holds true for any long effort like that, regardless of the level of or experience level of rider.
Yeah, that is incredible advice. Several years ago, the Queen of Pain, and this is not a poisoning story, but she volunteered to help my wife try to get her first sub-9. And this was just a couple of days before the Leadville 100. And I would say 75% of what she taught my wife was spend all of your time working. That is, spend less time at the aid stations and instead roll through and eat while you're rolling. It's fine to go slow, but keep rolling. Don't stand and, gasp for air. Push your bike while you're gasping for air. Always stay moving forward. 0 miles per hour hurts your average so much more than half a mile per hour. It is just amazing. Look at the math. My own advice for the 12-hour racer comes from personal experience. And that is, there was one year when I went out too hard, too early, and caused a domino effect that ruined my day. By the time I hit Columbine, I was tired. And because I was tired, I felt like I didn't have the energy to eat. And so that by the time I got back down to Twin Lakes Dam, I was not only tired, I was nauseous, and I was bonking. And by the time I got to up to Powerline, I was throwing up anytime I tried to get anything down. It's amazing how there can be a cascading set of failures. Stay with the basics. Make a promise to yourself that you are going to eat as much and as often as you said you would. You are going to stay moving, and that you are going to execute the plan that you had and not be making up new plans that sound good at the moment at 12,000 feet when you can't think. Keep eating, keep rolling, and stay with a plan that you made while you were training. And that is going to be your best chance for staying ahead of the cutoff time.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Payson said and also give credit to Rebecca Rush because she said the same thing to me too. Your feeds should be pit stops, not rest stops. Folks, you should watch a Formula One race, that's auto racing, before you do the Leadville Trail 100. Watch how orchestrated those pit stops are. They're amazing. Like they get out in under 2 seconds. Now, you're not going to get out in under 2 seconds. I get that. But the point is, those pit stops are so well orchestrated that they lose almost no time in their pits, the F1 driver does. And you can apply the same principle for a stop at Leadville. Just have everything planned out. So as you come into Twin Lakes or into Pipeline, wherever you're getting your feed, your feeder has whatever it is ready for you to swap bottles out, food out, boom, you're in and out, and you're moving again, which is what Payson said. Just try to keep moving.
Absolutely. Next question. What should racers carry? What do you carry at the start line, Payson? What is on you and on your bike?
Mechanical stuff to fix mechanicals, and stuff to maintain the engine. So that means fuel. Generally speaking, I will start with 1 bottle, which is a little bit less than some might suspect, but in my experience, it's so cool in the morning, and the intensity of the first part of the race is so significant that I made the mistake the first year of taking 2 bottles and I only touched 1. That I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everybody, depending on your pacing strategy and everything, but that's what I found to work for me. I take enough food to get me to the Pipeline aid station plus a safety net. So just in case I miss that feed or something crazy goes wrong, I don't want my race to be over that day due to missing a feed. In terms of equipment stuff, I take a tube, a light tube. I take a CO2 and a multi-tool and some tire plugs. And a chain link, like a replacement chain link.
I would love to drill in a little bit on the food part, because my whole racing experience transformed once I figured out eating. I've told this story possibly too many times, but I went from being a 9.5-hour racer to being an 8.5-hour racer when I finally figured out that I need to eat every 20 to 25 minutes, and I need to get about 250 to 270 calories in me every single hour. Suddenly I became a much faster racer, and it worked out. It worked well for me. Knowing what you are using is incredibly helpful. So, what is in that bottle? What are you eating, and how often as you get started?
So for almost any bike race, but especially longer ones, the adage I go by is start early and do it often. in terms of nutrition. So I start eating 30 minutes into the race. And I do it every 30 to 45 minutes during the race. And that's eating. That doesn't count drinking. And I typically will have some calories. For an event this grueling and long, I'll have calories in my bottles as well. So my choice there is GU Roctane. And I like to start without a caffeinated version. In my experience, you can over-caffeinate. Despite the fact that your metabolism is just going a mile a minute, you can over-caffeinate. And for me personally too, doing too much caffeine takes my metabolism even next level and can make me a little bit more susceptible to bonking because you're just ripping through calories even faster. That's just been the effect of caffeine for me personally. Absolutely use caffeine on the way back in. But fortunately with the GU Roctane stuff, they offer both caffeinated and non-caffeinated versions. And also it's important to note that nutrition starts before the event. So this year, I've been focusing a lot more on general, just kind of having all of my I's dotted and T's crossed nutritionally. And one way that I've been accomplishing that is through this new brand called Swiss RX, which is provided by The Feed. The Feed's been helping me get my hands on these Swiss RX supplements. And the reason I started using Swiss RX is because we like to think that we can have a perfectly balanced diet at all times, but when you're traveling, say you're flying into Leadville from a different part of the country, a different part of the world, you don't know what you're going to have access to food-wise in the few days before the Leadville 100. You're going to spend some time in airports. You're going to be standing in line to rent a car. And these are all things that can throw off your preparation a little bit. And so having access to a supplement regime that makes sure everything is squared away vitamin wise. Nitric oxide is something that has been really beneficial for me at high elevation. That just is a little bit added safety net going into a really grueling event like Leadville. And so then once you're on the start line, you can focus more on that race style food. GU is the ride food sponsor that I use. And you don't have to worry about, what you were doing before, and whether it was off in the days before. When I start the race, I sort of think of it as almost like it's almost like a food taper in a way. Generally, I start with more solid foods and gradually taper to more easily digested foods like the GU chews or GU gels. The exception to that is for the first hour or so, I'll actually start with GU gels just because it can be so hectic and you don't want to be fumbling with, bar wrappers or, trying to unwrap a waffle or something like that you might drop, and just grabbing a quick GU can be quick and easy. But once that first hectic hour is over, I settle back into, chews and waffles and all that sort of thing for a little while.
Oh, interesting. Now, how strong do you mix your Roctane? I 1 scoop, 2 scoops, about how many calories are in a bottle?
Yeah, I do 2 scoops generally, which is about 250 calories, which is awesome. I mean, that's technically you should be able to only drink all those calories you need. 250 calories an hour should get you through. I like to overshoot it some. I've spent so much time working on nutrition and consuming GU product that I have been able to, determine that I can do like 350 calories an hour. So I'll typically down a full bottle an hour plus a gel or plus a pack of chews or something like that.
Honestly, Hadi, my eating habits in Leadville as well as, or better than I have, having crewed for me before. I don't have anything really to add to what Payson is doing. This is one way where I and a podium racing Leadville veteran are very similar. There's more ways that we are not. How about you, Hadi? Anything to add on to this question?
Well, as far as what you carry, food, yes. And while we're talking about food, I like to pre-open my packages, everything. I figure if I don't eat a Cliff Bar and it's open at the end of the day, I mean, so what? I sacrifice a Cliff Bar or what have you. So I like to pre-open all that stuff because, man, struggling with packages when you're bombing towards or Dan Hagerman or what have you, that can be a real hassle to do. So I pre-open all those packages. I have, there is some argument against mixing calories and your hydration as far as what it does to your gut. I've gone both ways, Fatty. It's worked for me to load my bottles with calories. I know it can be tough on other people's guts. So you got to figure that out. You got to know going in that, oh yeah, I can drink my calories and it doesn't mess with my hydration. You want to know that going in. And then you know what to choose, right? Then okay, I can do GU Octane, I can do this many scoops, going in. So I've done both, but Fatty, I've got a pretty incredible gut, I think. So I'm pretty lucky in that aspect.
You are a specimen, that is for sure.
And a quick follow-up on that, I should caveat everything by saying that I do take some just straight water bottles as well. And I think just changing it up a little bit can go a long way. And so I'll change up my Roctane flavors, that helps a lot. Just rinsing your mouth out with some water now and then after taking in so much sugar can go a really long way. And typically in the last hour or two, I am drinking only water. It just seems to agree with me better at that point.
Hadi, we're going to interrupt Payson just for a moment here. As you know, the feed has been with this show ever since it has existed, and there's good reason for that. It is the same reason that Payson is with the feed, and I am, and Pete Stetina is, and Brandon over at the feed comes and races the Leadville 100 and just blows the roof off it every year.
That's right. It's because the feed is our kind of people, selling the whole range of GU products along with a huge range of products for endurance athletes. And it's just really clear. They are a company that walks the walk.
Yeah, they truly are. I get their newsletter each week, and they are, of course, selling product in it, but it's product that they are using and testing and recommending. I have been sent so many things over the years to try out, and some of the ones that the feed has sent me has made a huge difference in my writing, like GU.
It's definitely a company for people like our listeners, and it's worth saying again, the feed makes it easy to try out products they have found useful by giving our listeners a 15% discount on all products. Just go to thefeed.com/Leadville to get signed up.
Yeah, and be sure to introduce yourself to them at the Leadville Expo, as well as say hi to Brandon and crew at the Leadville group ride we're doing next week.
Well, Fatty, let's do Payson's hot takes for Leadville. We did this with Todd Wells. It seemed like a cool thing, so let's try it on another pro and see what he comes up with. All right, Payson, here you go. Hot takes, quick answers. Your favorite part of the course, Payson?
The finish line. No, just kidding. I really enjoy bombing down power line. As a mountain biker, that's it's early in the race, so you're still feeling good. Hopes are high, and it's just fun to navigate that pretty challenging descent.
Finish line, not a bad answer. That was Todd Wells' answer. Okay, your least favorite part of the course?
Probably the opening pavement descent. It's honestly pretty nervy there at the front. It's frequently quite cold. You know that you're going to work up a sweat going up St. Kevin's, and so you kind of grit out being underdressed a little bit. So that's always a bit of a tough 10 or 15 minutes.
No doubt. Yeah, I always have a little anxiety with that. What is one thing as you are riding by and seeing other racers still coming up Columbine that you've noticed folks would have a better time, a faster time, if they knew or did this?
I would say higher cadence. Oftentimes you see folks really grinding, and when someone gets fatigued, no matter the level cyclist you're at, that's kind of something people are susceptible to. I'm guilty of that sometimes also. You almost want to push deeper into the muscular fatigue and go into a bigger gear. But the thing is, heart and lungs don't really fatigue. And when you go into a higher gear, you're moving more of the physiological load to heart and lungs. And that doesn't always work, because when you're at super high elevation, you could be hyperventilating anyway. But if you feel like your muscles are really becoming the weak link, maybe you're struggling with some cramps, that sort of thing, shifting into a lighter gear and spinning your legs helps a lot. And when I was battling Alban Lakata in 2018, I was really, really battling some cramps, and putting it in a light gear and spinning 100 plus RPMs is really what saved my day that day.
Rebecca Rush's coach, Tim Cusick, said the same thing recently. I was listening to him. He said, mashing is just going to hurt you in the end. You want to try and have a higher cadence if you can, if that's within your abilities, do that. Okay, here's one we have gone back and forth with on the show. It's been talked about on forums regarding the Leadville Trail 100. So for you, Payson, or for anyone, now for you, hardtail, this is for Leadville, hardtail or full suspension?
Yep, great question. In the past, for me, it's been hardtail. But Trek has this newish full suspension called the Super Caliber. That's quite short travel, very light. It's got 60 mils of travel in the back, 100 in the front, and it's just insanely stiff and feels like a hardtail until you unlock the suspension. And the truth of the matter is, yes, Leadville is a predominantly on dirt road, rocky fire road, but it's still bumpy. And depending on the style rider you are and how long the event you think might take you, having a full suspension can go a really long way in saving energy over the course of a long day. So I will be going with that Super Caliber full suspension this year.
That's a gold medal bike too. Yolanda Neff just won gold medal on that bicycle. So you're in good company.
If it's fast, if it's fast enough for her, I have to assume it's fast enough for me.
The first time I ever saw that bike, I went straight to Leadville 100 and said, that looks like that was built with this race in mind. So I'm super excited to see how you do and wish you all the best.
We are reserving the customary thank yous to Payson for next show because Payson has generously offered to come back and answer some remaining questions. Part 2 will be out shortly. In fact, you might see it in your feed by the time you finish this podcast.
Yeah. If you'd like to hear some more of Payson's voice, he has his podcast, The Adventure Stache, and he has a YouTube channel under his name. Both are worth a look and listen. One
of the great things about the Leadville Trail 100, Fatty, is that finisher's sweatshirt with the finishing time stenciled onto one arm.
Mm-hmm.
These things are a real source of pride and quite functional, I might add. I wear mine around when the weather gets cool. Yes, it gets cool in Southern California. And even my oldest Leadville sweatshirt has held up well.
I love those sweatshirts and the jackets, but why stop there? If you want to display your pride further, make a jersey or a full-blown kit with your finished time and whatever else you want on it. And you can do that with DNA Cycling. They have a super easy-to-use custom kit department where you can design your own Leadville Finishers kit, put your time on that, let your imagination run wild.
Yeah, maybe list the names of your crew members or supporters back home or someone you rode in memory of. You can add the names of the significant climbs at Leadville, and I hope I don't have to remind you of those. DNA can handle all that special stuff, and they put it all on a quality kit. Great fabrics, brilliant colors, plenty of fit choices if you want a non-cyclist to have one, and of course, Italian made.
Yeah, getting started is super easy. Just head to dnacycling.com, choose the custom apparel option, and make sure you let them know you found out about DNA from the Leadville Podcast.
Let's wrap this episode. Like we said, we have round 2 of your questions with Payson, and we plan to turn that episode out quicker than normal, so watch your feed for that.
Yep, and we are social on social. I'm on Twitter at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is on Instagram at Michael Houghton. Of course, we're both on Facebook, Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page. And if you want to have a conversation, you need more than just one or two little back and forths, join our Slack channel. You'll find a link to it over at Leadville100podcast.com.
If you like this show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. Apple Podcasts is a popular place to do that. But to see all the ways you can find the show, it's pod.link/Leadville.
Good luck in your tapering. Thank you so much for listening. And we're going to see you at the 2021 starting line.
And at the finish line and the group ride before the race. At the pre-race meeting and the award ceremony and walking around town.
Let's face it, it's going to be hard to not see us. We'll see you soon in Leadville.